Good evening and welcome to Square Media Network. I am LaWana Mayfield and this is Unapologetically Black. I am so excited to welcome back Chair of the Mecklenburg County Board of County Commissioners, George Dunlap.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the invite. I guess I wasn't too bad last time.
Right, you were amazing last time, which is why we had to have you back. And I am honored to welcome a beautiful spirit and a beautiful woman who I get to call my friend, Miss Melissa Morris.
Oh, that's very sweet of you. Thanks for having me.
Yes, so tonight, and all of you that are tuning in, thank you for joining us and tuning in today. Arts, parks, schools, another look. There's a ballot measure coming up, and we are in early voting in Charlotte, Mecklenburg County right now. So we're going to jump right on into it. One disclaimer I would love to give to everyone for full disclosure. Commissioner Dunlap and I both serve on the board for the Arts and Science Council, which I proudly serve on. It is an appointment by the mayor of the city of Charlotte, so I represent as the city council representative on the board of Arts and Science Council. But we need to have a different type of conversation regarding this upcoming sales tax, what the sales tax is. It is a quarter-cent sales tax that we have taken to the ballot that we're asking the community to vote on. And Melissa, I invited you because you are a recent transplant, not so recent because it's almost 5 years, that you've been here, but still relatively recent.
Yeah.
Moved to the city of Charlotte. So I thought it would be a good opportunity because you're not necessarily deep into a yay or nay on the vote.
Right.
And I thought this would be a great opportunity for us to just have an open conversation.
Yeah.
Great.
Mr. Dunlap, do you want to start with any thoughts?
Well, actually, I thought it might be a good idea to kind of let people know how we got to where we are today. And so, and I'll cut through some of it because it's kind of irrelevant relative to the conversation that I hope we'll have. And primarily the Arts and Science Council came before the County Commission and asked us if we would be willing to put forth the resolution to do the quarter-cent sales tax. And after a lot of study and debate and discussion, 7 of the 9 of us agreed to put it before the voters. Not a position, but to say, give the voters an opportunity to have their say as to whether or not the quarter-cent sales tax ought to be levied or not.
So, question for you while we think about that. Why a quarter-cent sales tax versus a 10-cent, a 15-cent, a 20-cent sales tax, since the challenge for some of the people that I've seen online is the fact that this quarter is the last quarter that can be levied since the state has a tax rate of no more than 7.50, so 7.5. Yeah. Why use the entire quarter? Is there reasoning behind it to help the community understand?
Well, part of the reason is the amount of money that it would generate.
Okay.
And so less than a quarter of a cent would generate less than the $50 that we're proposing to raise with the quarter of a cent sales tax. As it relates to this being the last tax, you know, and I hear that from the people who say we should not do this if this is our last tax that we could ever levy. Well, the truth of the matter is that the people who will tell you that wouldn't vote for any tax, no matter what. And what they do is they throw a carrot out there for people to give them something to think about. And they'll say, well, we should use this for affordable housing, or we should use this for transportation, or we should use this, and they keep going down this list of things that we ought to use it for, when in fact, this could have been levied back in 2012. And if they were really so interested in doing this, it would have been done already. And so the fact is, it hadn't been done, and they still don't want you to do it because they're saying, but if you do this, it's the last tax we can ever levy for anything.
So we're in 2019, but Mecklenburg County has had the ability to do a quarter cent sales tax since 2012.
Since 2012.
And even though I want us to acknowledge that there is some validity in people saying, okay, we have a housing crisis, but I think it's also that miscommunication of who does what. When you look at the fact that we have 3 local forms of government, city, county, and school board, but there's also, again, transparency, the challenge where city historically has been known for housing, but the county has stepped into that housing field with having a development made.
So what we learned from the recent survey that we did 2 years ago, affordable housing wasn't even on the radar for county commissioners.
Okay.
And it has typically not been something that the county commission has addressed because it wasn't in our sphere of influence. As you stated, it was an issue for the city. But our county commissioners, as it's comprised right now, feel that we have a role to play as well. And as a result of that, we've kind of stepped into this affordable housing place as well. And then the other thing is that people really don't know just how much money has been raised in this community related to affordable housing.
Okay.
$270 million. So
Over what time period?
just this year.
Now, keep in mind as we talk about that 270 million, that is because city had a bond issuance
Right.
back in 2018 where we came to the community and asked the community, and then there was light, asked the community to support a bond request for 50 million. And then the corporate community and nonprofit, churches and other leaders and individual, private, wealthy donors contributed to get us to the point of
Another
$270 million.
$120 million available for affordable housing. So the issue now is, how do you spend that?
Right.
And so that's the conversation that I think we'll have going forward in terms of how you spend that. Lots of different people engaged in the conversation, lots of different ideas about how best to do it. You know, you hear this proposal, well, we ought to just build affordable housing. Well, some people say, well, you got these dilapidated apartments. Why don't you buy them from the owner who can't afford to fix them up, rehab them, and make them available? If you look at the amount of money that's being spent by the Housing Authority to give Section 8 vouchers for the amount of money that they use in rent subsidy, they could build a whole bunch of houses for that same amount of money or even more. But the problem is the government is involved.
Exactly.
And when the government
We
get
cause
involved,
problems.
they have regulations and rules that prohibit you from doing what is best. I had somebody send me an email, maybe it was on Facebook the other day, about why is it that we don't allow small homes?
Tiny homes.
Tiny homes.
Right.
Or the boxcar homes, what do you call them?
Oh,
home
yes.
base, yeah.
Well,
they're still
Portland
tiny
and other
homes, but
places
yeah.
are using
Yeah.
old box cars from
Right.
railroads,
Oh,
those
right,
type
yeah,
of
those-
cars, and
Right.
turning them into homes.
And so the real reason is there are rules and regulations that prohibit that. Now, whether that can change or not, I don't know. But I think we ought to explore every avenue we can to address the affordable housing crisis, but that's not the only crisis.
You're right. It's not the only crisis. And when we talk about the impact of this quarter cent sales tax, to Melissa, I would like for you to jump in because I'm going to go to this rather quickly because me and modern technology, some days we work well, some days we don't. So I didn't take out the pieces I wanted to take out. But there was there was a mailer that went out. So this mailer said keeping kids busy and out of trouble to help our kids fulfill their potential in support of the sales tax. And young man did share it on Facebook. Thank you, Kevin. So here is the comment. Regardless of where I stand on the sales tax, I'm still deciding. I think this mailer sends the absolute wrong message about kids in our Charlotte community. There are a million different ways to express an asset-based approach as to why parks, arts, and education are a worthy investment, rather than sending a mailer to probably thousands of people that expresses a belief that without this sales tax increase, kids are going to get into trouble because they won't be busy
Right.
with art.
Well,
A cheap threat that opens the door for all kinds of dangerous assumptions and biases to run rampant about which kids need to stay busy, because the photo was of a diversity of both Black, white, and Latino children,
Okay.
and who this will keep out of trouble. As someone who spends all day with kids, it just really hits me the wrong way. Do better, Partnership for a Better Mecklenburg. I'm going to go to Melissa as a mother, a grandmother. I don't know if you received the mailer.
No, I
So
didn't
this
see
will be the
one,
first
yeah.
time that you heard it, but looking at the mailer and reading these comments of the person who received it, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think the challenge is, part of it is the education, right? And really, what are we using this money for? And, and I know you're going to explain a little bit more exactly, how
You
that
know I
money is
am.
going to break down. I know it's coming. And so I think that, when there are housing issues and there are, so many issues around families and money and, where are we getting money from and what's the city doing, what's the county doing to help, that when all you see out of context is this mailer about, okay, now you want me to pay this tax for what? So Hamilton can come back to town, or right. So I think that there have to be louder conversations around what this money is for, the pros and the cons. I mean, I get if you're really researching what's happening, then you'll have the information. But I do think that if I just got this in the mail and, my kids are grown up, as you pointed out, I'm not a grandma, I'm a Mima, just to be clear.
Okay, excuse me.
So I think it is important to have more information, more input as to what this money is going to. I certainly lived through a time where, arts in school was a regular, it wasn't a question. And then as my kids went through school, a lot of that was phased out. So I certainly, from a school perspective, understand the importance of having arts and education. But I also know that that's not all that this money is going for. So it's not like a school bond issue where we're getting, monies for school specifically. So again, I think there has to be more information on a flyer that comes out, like, vote for this. And I get, you can only put so much on a flyer.
Right.
But there have to be more conversations or commercials or community forums or, so people understand exactly where that money is going and, who's going to be accountable for that money. If it's broken down into these 3 or 4 categories, how are we making sure that this quarter-cent tax is going to my kid's school?
And that's very valid, which is one of the reasons why we're joining in, we're having the conversation.
Right.
Because there have been a number of community conversations, but the reality is a lot of people work in the evenings. So they're not able to attend that. So for those who aren't, they're able to tune in to this now or be able to watch it later. But you gave a perfect segue, because before we got started, George, you were sharing, because you have a history. And when arts were in school and then that transition. So I would love for you to give not only those who are watching who are Charlotte natives as a reminder, but those who are new to Charlotte, give them a little history around where Charlotte Mecklenburg has been with the arts.
Yeah, and I'd love to do that. But before I do that, let me go back and address this person's concern.
Yes.
Because I think it's a very valid concern. What I got from this, and I didn't get it in the mail, was that this person somehow felt offended that the mailer would come out with these children's picture on it and say, keep them out of trouble.
Right.
And he said that it could lead to assumptions such as, well, if we don't have arts, they might be in trouble. And so we have to deal with that. And so while those are concerns, they're very valid concerns, and maybe the mailer could have said something different. Maybe it could have had a different photo on the mailer itself. But let's not lose what the intent was.
Right.
So you acknowledge those concerns, and maybe it could have been done differently, but let's deal with the real issue. And the real issue is that historically, I'm going to get into where you want me to go. Historically, children who attended Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools could go to school and participate in the arts.
Yep.
They could take band and they can take orchestra.
Right.
And so while I was serving as a school board member, Bill Malik and I fought vigorously to prohibit the school board from taking arts out of the school. And we were not successful, so they removed arts from the school. Now,
Do you remember who led that?
I don't remember who led that. Probably the superintendent at that time, and I don't remember who that was at that time. But but this is the concern, and people never really spoke to that issue. When you took the ability for our children to participate in the arts out of the school, then who could then participate in band and orchestra?
Right.
Only the children of the parents who could afford it.
And had booster clubs and had very strong PTAs.
Absolutely. So what that did was, for the most part, it said to a lot of children in my community, well, you can't do the arts, can't play in the orchestra or the band, but sports are still out there.
Yes.
Now, what we're beginning to realize is every kid can't play sports.
Right.
And so here was another avenue that they could have participated that they no longer have available to them.
I will say all kids can play sports. Maybe not well.
Not well. Okay, all right.
Kind of like we
I'll accept
can
that.
all sing sometimes a
That's
joyful
right.
noise.
That's right.
That's me.
Yes.
Okay, I'll accept that. But the fact is, they took away one of those things that children could be participating in that could keep kids off the streets and out of trouble. And so by, again, having this community, making available to all children across the board the ability to participate in field trips, the ability to participate in band and orchestra, I think is just another tool in the tool chest that keeps kids off the streets and out of trouble.
Okay. So,
Well, and just to ask the question, and maybe we'll get to this, but I think it's important again to kind of frame where this money is going,
because it is
because
parks,
it's not
it's
just
arts, parks,
schools.
and
so
schools.
So,
Arts,
We
parks,
let a lot
and-
because
and-
it's the bulk of the percentage is going to arts.
right.
Okay, and so you're right, 22%, 17% to parks,
Okay.
8% educational dollars, and then there's another 5% that goes to the northern and the southern towns. And so let me tell you how that came about, because we had much debate about this and why it was so important.
Okay.
So let's consider this. Mecklenburg County is required to fund our public school system to the tune of about $80 million.
Okay.
Currently, Mecklenburg County commissioners appropriate more than $540 million to our school system, over and above what the federal dollars do and what the state dollars do. Additionally, Mecklenburg County funds our park and recreation system to the tune of $54 million each year. We give arts $2 million.
Right.
Okay.
Now, the other thing is that if the school system ran into trouble, they didn't have enough money to do the things that they wanted to do, they got somebody they can call on.
Okay.
They can call on the county commissioners and say, we need additional dollars. And if we agree, all we got to do is raise more taxes, and they can get them.
So let me ask you there before you go on. So if the school has that much money and it's potentially easy to kind of ask if you need more, why is there 8% of this money going to school dollars?
So I'm glad you asked. Okay. So the 8% that is being designated for schools primarily is for teacher supplement.
Okay.
Now, they have the ability to do additional things, but it's primarily for teacher supplements. Anybody who knows the history of teacher pay in North Carolina know that for a long time we were at the very bottom.
Yes.
And so in recent years, we've been trying to do that. And while Mecklenburg County is not the employer of school teachers, we jumped into that too.
Okay.
we gave them a raise. They're state employees, but Mecklenburg County gave the teachers a raise.
Okay.
Not only that, we gave them an additional supplement a few years ago. And then last year, we gave them another raise in the supplement. And with this $8 million, they will get an additional
The 8%.
raise in the supplement. Now, that was intentional because Mecklenburg County was losing teachers. And if we really believe that we should have the best education, then we ought to be able to have the best teachers. And one of the ways we found to be able to bring the best teachers to Mecklenburg County is pay more than everybody else.
Right.
Because some people are doing it for the money. Not everybody, but some people are doing it for the money. And
But
so
it's also, you got to recognize, pay people their value.
I agree.
Because we have a lot of teachers out there that have master's degrees, so they've invested in their education to then come out and do this job that really is a job of love, because they're coming out of pocket having to help with school supplies and so many other things, because you have students who unfortunately are coming to school and don't have access to those supplies at home.
And I agree wholeheartedly. And this is another thing. You know, we talk about teachers going into their pockets with a little bit of money that they raise to do additional things in the classroom. Then these dollars are available to be used in that way as well. So you know, there's going to be some flexibility.
So that 8% or $8 million of that's going isn't specifically for arts within the schools. It's specifically going to teachers to help supplement their expenses, their classroom expenses.
For the most part, not all of it, but the most part. But I'm glad you raised the issue.
Okay.
Because what people ought to know is that a part of that $22 million
Right.
that the Arts and Science Council will be managing is educational dollars. Not spelled out the specific amount,
Okay.
but as we talk about bringing orchestra and band back into the school, those funds will come from that $22 million.
Okay.
In addition to that, we're going to be able to make sure that kids have an opportunity to go back and start taking field trips again. You know, when I
Right,
was
because school students, we don't do field trips anymore. And even though I grew up in South Florida, I remember just the array of things. Wish I had kept working on that flute now that Lizzo is out. So I'm mad about
She
that
claimed
one. But, you know, when you think about what we had access to that we took for granted, that a lot of children today don't even know about. And unless you're at Northwest School of the Arts or a specific school, you don't even have access to this. And I was having a conversation earlier today when we were talking offline. I shared where I ran into Darrell Williams, and he was like, arts is what led him to architecture in the first place. I was standing there. It was Darrell Williams. It was Dr. Peter Weary at Mayfield Memorial Baptist. It was also Linwood Faust there. Dr. Weary was saying art saved his life when he was young because he grew up in a very rough neighborhood. So I think with the mailer itself, it was a good idea to have the children, mainly because children automatically pulls at people's heartstrings. So when they see the kids, they're like, oh, the little people. I think we probably could have had a different impact if we had done like most campaigns and had 2 or 3 mailers out, and that second mailer had been of some of Charlotte's highlights that the arts. So having Anthony Hamilton or having a radio ad or the commercial with Anthony Hamilton talking about the impact of the arts, of Fantasia talking about the impact, Darrell Williams, Dr. Weary, Harvey Gantt, all of these people who have helped to grow our city and make Charlotte what Charlotte is known for them to talk about their personal experience and what the arts did with giving them a different vision and a different path.
Yeah.
Oh, I agree. And if you really took the time to talk to people in Charlotte, they'll tell you what a difference it made. You know, my son had the opportunity to participate in orchestra before they removed it from the school. And I was so disappointed because they made him play the cello. I'm a sax guy.
Oh, okay.
But I will tell you that 39 years of age, okay, he played cello in 6th grade. 39 years of age. He still plays the cello, and he has 5 children who play string instruments.
So I will share and thank you for those that are tuning in and sending in comments. Good friend Robert Greer said, "Hi LaWana, I got my start with playing the violin by taking orchestra class in CMS 5th to 12th grades. We need orchestra."
Absolutely.
And those are the comments that unfortunately we're not hearing as much of, because when I was preparing for this evening, I went on to Facebook, because that's our number one place for everything, and tried to capture comments on both sides, both those that had concerns as well as those that are in support. To be perfectly honest, there aren't as many messages out there for those that are in support that go into detail. They'll just say, "I support," or share the marketing that was created through the Arts and Science Council. So thank you for that. And Kanika, I'll ask your question in a minute. I have a question regarding the teachers, but I want to read this. And someone posted this one, and those of you at home probably can't read it because it's really small. "Good morning. I love arts, parks, and education as well. Who doesn't? I really love our teachers, our artists, and I advocate daily for access to opportunities and housing for our Charlotte families. However, for me, this text needs structure and a master plan, and how do we strategically integrate art in already gentrifying areas without further exacerbating our current issues and aiding displacement. City and county, although different responsibilities, have the same charge, and we need to work together in conjunction with our nonprofits to create a better Mecklenburg. I agree, but this isn't it. Formula arts plus parks plus opportunity zones equals mass displacement without a proper strategic plan, of course, especially in inner city areas, and will further exacerbate gentrification and poor ADOS blacks. I don't know what ADOS blacks. No, this is still long. Blacks carry this weight worse than anyone. Because at the end of the day, these are the questions out there. My argument: let's get the map and strategically draft a master plan. Define which types of art are we speaking of. The word art is very subjective. Who gets what and where and what percentages? Where can we create art hubs? Which areas have higher needs? What schools need access versus other schools we really shouldn't vote first and plan later? It isn't just about additional change. It is ultimately about the transformative power of what $22.5 million can be used for. Art can support economic development and create jobs for the very people we say need access to the arts. We have a nasty habit of planning for people to be predominantly poor, instead of properly planning around how our policies keep them poor and the cause and effect of our decisions. Please vote no. Yes, I am in line. My business would benefit, but I can't in good conscience support this now. If you are supporting this, I respect your constitutional right to vote for. Please respect mine to vote against.
And we do respect that. However, what this says to me is this is a person who has not kept up with any of the discussion and is not aware of the governance structure, is not aware of all the plans. And this stuff has been discussed primarily in our board meetings. And of
that's
course,
where tonight comes in, because a lot of people do work, so they might not know that. So you get to share that and help us understand.
You know, and I'm happy to do this. But I can tell you that there has been a lot of planning that has gone into this. People didn't come up with this in a vacuum. And there are people all across this community who participate. We have the starving artists that participate. We've got the black artists. We've got the white artists. We've got the theater companies. And through this process, I have learned so much about things that are funded through the arts that I had no clue was funded by the arts. So we look at all these festivals that take place in our community.
We just
Japanese
had
festival,
the Festival of India 3 weekends ago.
All of these things are supported with dollars
Sure.
through the arts. Not only that, what we've learned through this process is that culturally, different kind of art is appreciated in different parts of our community.
Yes.
And so as a part of that, there will be community conversations about what art needs to be in which communities.
So
And
the communities will be at the table to help
Absolutely.
to help decide what art looks like for them.
there will be, first of all, in the governance structure, people will have an opportunity to apply and say, I want to be a part of the discussion. I want to serve on the board to help decide which organizations get the money and how it's allocated. Because this whole structure, the umbrella of being transparent,
Yes.
being equitable, being diverse, and to make sure that these things happen. Every year, the Arts and Science Council will enter into a contract with the county of Mecklenburg. And I will tell you, I may not be chair for long, but as long as I'm there, we're going to ensure that the Arts and Science Council spends the money on the priorities that we set throughout this community. Under that umbrella will be other community groups that will help to decide which things are funded. I tell you, before I agreed to put this on the ballot and put it before my commissioners, I took the opportunity to go and visit some arts groups that I'd never gone to visit. And I learned a tremendous amount about what's currently going on in our community. Most people don't have a clue. I think I'm a pretty informed dude,
Okay.
but I had no clue. There is a black and brown orchestra made of young children that plays in our community. I had no clue.
How we find out about that?
Well, you got to go ask.
Right.
You got to go look.
But here's the thing, though. We got to keep in mind, people don't know what to ask.
Right.
They don't know where to look.
Right.
So that's part of the challenge is how do we get the information out there to let the community know. At the end of the day, I want everyone to vote, but I want you to be an educated voter.
Absolutely. And so I start looking at stuff like that. And then we started, well, how do people get to go, for example, to the Mint Museum?
Right.
Only to learn that every Wednesday is free.
Every Wednesday.
Every Wednesday. It don't matter who you are, where you come from, you can go free.
So I've heard, and I think in one of my slides, there's a question about it, maybe not, but I heard people say, well, the museums should be free if we're going to do that. And I think people don't realize that between Night Theater, the Mint, Uptown, and the Mint off
Beckler
around
and the Spirit Square and
I think Harvey B. Gantt Center as well.
yes.
That they have days that are free
Yeah,
or
most
discounted. I
places
think
do.
even this Discovery Place has like $1 day.
And so the beauty
And
of
if you're
this,
low income, there are certain discounts that you can get as well.
yeah. So the beauty of this is that if this sales tax pass, it'll be free on steroids. Now, that doesn't mean everything is going to be free,
Right.
but more things will be free. And not only that, it gives the entire community the opportunity to participate equally.
Okay.
You know, that doesn't mean everything's going to be free.
So let me jump in there for a second.
Yes.
So to this person's point of the
Right.
slides that you have up, and this discussion of, you know, things, there are opportunities already to get into places free, to get some of this without this sales tax.
Currently.
Right. So we don't currently have that tax in place. So those dollars obviously are not already allocated to do those things. And museums, depending on who owns them, you know, grant funding, so on and so forth. I support the arts. I support teachers. You support
the parks?
There's nothing. I mean, I moved from Philadelphia to get some green space. So nothing against Philly, but for me, right, moving here, or, you know, it's like there are a lot of things that are in place already. So just like I asked about for the dollars for school, so under the Arts and Council monies coming through, that money isn't specifically going to art-specific dollars for teachers. So now when we talk about some of these things through Arts and Council, it sounds like, and certainly you can clarify this a little bit, it sounds like it's going to, when you say, you know, now it'll be free on steroids, it sounds like it's like it's dollars that are going into institutions that obviously are already running and finding ways to offer free services. So then why should I give more of my money if I've got kids at home and bills to pay? If these arts centers are already running and have free days, then why am I spending more money?
I think that's a valid question.
Yes.
So
That's what I'm here for.
I love you. I love you for that. For that, if that ain't the only thing. But
Well.
check this out. So for people who have been in Mecklenburg County for some period of time, they can remember that every year there was an arts campaign, and I was with the police department. And I'll be honest, every year when this campaign took place, your supervisor would call you in and give you a sheet and expect you to fill it out.
Okay.
And everybody who worked for anybody was asked to contribute.
Okay.
And so we had lots of money to fund the arts.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, since that time, these company campaigns have kind of faltered.
Okay.
But there's a reason to that, because there was a time where a lot of the executive leadership for these companies lived in Charlotte and they were invested in Charlotte. So you had those individuals that helped to push the campaign through the organization and let staff know about it. A lot of them now, that executive leadership, the presidents, the CEOs don't necessarily live here anymore.
Right.
And corporate dollars have considerably cut back because there was more than
Basically
a
dried
50
up.
Yeah.
yes, it was more than a 70% decrease for Arts and Science Council, which the majority of that funding came from corporate campaigns.
And so we don't have the dollars to do the things. If you look at the historical nature of the funding of the art, I mean, it has gone down considerably. And so if it continues to go down, then we'll continue to cut back on those programs that you
Sure.
talk about that are now free. And so what happens when all the funding is gone is that the only people who get to participate are those who can afford to pay.
Right.
And so this is a way to have equitable distribution, if you will, throughout our entire community, so that those who cannot pay, maybe they pay on a sliding fee or a sliding scale.
Right.
Maybe some people pay the full fare, some pay a half the fare. But the bottom line is to make it more available to more people. And this is the other thing that people tend to forget. And this is something that I had to learn. When I thought of the arts, I thought of the Harvey Gantt Museum,
Right.
I thought of the Blumenthal, I thought of the Charlotte Ballet, I thought of the Beckler, and Spirit Square and those things. But most people don't understand that when you have, what's that stuff when people talk, they're rhyming and stuff?
Rap.
Rap? Well, not, yes.
Spoken word.
Spoken word.
Yeah, spoken word.
People don't know
That's arts.
that's art.
Sure.
And that is funded through the Arts and Science Council.
We just had a camp that was partly sponsored through ULI, the Urban Land Institute, that was the hip hop architectural camp for young people. I actually shared it on my Facebook page because the young people who were in the camp learned the structure of a rap
Okay.
and a lot of other things and that goes along with it, because a lot of times we see the end result. We don't see the work
Sure.
that goes into it.
Sure.
So I didn't, until I was invited to participate and just to come visit, I didn't know such a thing happened. So that was a piece of arts funding that wasn't even a consideration for me.
Good example, Studio 345, for
Yes.
people who don't know. Every day after school, these young people come to the studio, and whatever artistic expression they want to participate in, there is a program for them.
Okay.
And I'll be the first to tell you, that's why elected officials and politicians shouldn't try to decide where arts funding ought to go, because I don't necessarily understand everything that's artistically
Sure.
valuable.
Sure.
I could look at a piece of art and offend you if I say, what is that? But to the artist, I mean, they put a lot into that. And so we want to make sure that people who understand artistic expression. So the rap. I met two brothers a few weeks ago at an event that were both foster children. And as a way to deal with their issues, they learned to dance.
Okay.
And obviously, they do it so well that now on Friday nights, they teach dancing at Spirit Square.
Wow.
And so there are all
awesome.
these success stories. There's all of these stories that the community, for the most part, hadn't heard about. The community, for the most part, didn't know how they were funded or who was funding them. And so now we're behind the eight ball telling the story of what these dollars have done for Mecklenburg County.
Right.
So I have a question for you, George, that came in. So thank you for sending this in.
I have a couple questions too when you're done.
Oh, great. Why don't the local governments fund a robust content strategy to drive citizens to their websites where they can educate themselves? A lot of this has to do with being expected to trust a mailer when strategically written and SEO tagged blog posts could be waiting for people who become concerned to do a Google when the time finally arrives in their personal journeys to finally catch up with the discussion. Why can't local governments have a rapid response to create content like this so that when I finally get around to paying attention, reality, I'll find an array of links to county created content that's there to clarify most, if not all, of my concerns?
Well, you know, it's sad to say that the government, and people probably never noticed this, the government is not running the campaign because
Right.
we can't.
Right.
We
By law.
we can't even allocate money to run the campaign.
Right.
And therein lies a part of the problem, because you got to hire a campaign manager, you got to hire people who do social media,
strategists.
You got to hire all these people that
Marketing.
are algorithms and all that,
Logistics.
all of that stuff, and they're not us.
Right.
And so it's kind of been left to other people, because the way the law is structured, we can't do it. And I'll tell you what's even worse. What's even worse is the fact that when you look at the ballot, and it says, this is
For
what it'll
and
say.
against.
It'll say, Mecklenburg County sales use tax, local sales and use tax at a rate of 1/4%, in addition to all other state and local sales and use tax. It says absolutely nothing
Right.
about arts, parks, or education.
Right.
And the law prohibits us from saying that. So our challenge is having people to understand that when they see that on the ballot, that's what it means. You know, and it was probably done strategically so that people didn't pass the tax. But the fact is, we have no say-so. We have absolutely no control. And that's why you have to generate money to run a campaign to educate people so that when they see that on the ballot, what it really means is this is a tax to fund the arts, the parks, and education. Now, and let me tell you this other thing. You know,
He gets so excited.
I'm gonna cut you off in a minute, but go ahead.
Okay. because I want people to understand, you know, when we say tax, what are we really talking about in terms of dollars?
Right.
We want to know what people are really
Now,
arguing about.
don't answer this one yet. Hold on
What?
to that. Make a
You
note
made
for
me
yourself.
you made me forget.
No, I need you to write that down, because one of my slides does make a comment regarding who is actually going to be taxed. So
Okay.
hold on to that.
That's one of the-
make
that's
a
one of
note.
the questions
So
I have.
okay,
okay.
well,
Yeah.
Miss
I
Melissa.
got an answer.
So Melissa
Let
has a couple of questions that came through on your page. So what do you have?
I
Yeah,
ain't even
well,
watching it.
well, no, well, there are two.
Okay.
Well, one is the question, you know, we'll wait to hold off on what
No,
you're
no,
talking
go
about.
ahead.
Well, it's about exactly who's going to be paying for this tax, right? Is it just going to be homeowners? Is it going to be people who work in the city? Is it, you know, who is that affected by?
Where it
So-
was noted diapers, baby formula, fast food, things that people, the concern is those who have less wealth, their everyday supplies. So, but did they have the specific question?
No, that this
Okay.
was No, they were. It was more. It was related to again who's responsible for paying this. So as you know, I own a home within Mecklenburg County. I would expect that I would be paying. But is it also going to be added on to folks who are shopping? Is it that kind of sales tax?
So I love the opportunity to educate people. I just get excited about that.
I see.
So there are 3 ways to tax people.
Okay.
There's actually more. So there are state taxes,
Right.
there are federal taxes, there are local taxes, and there are fees.
Okay.
Mecklenburg County either assesses a property tax,
Okay.
a sales tax, or assesses fees to make up our entire $1.9 billion budget.
Slide up a little before you knock my TV down.
That TV come down, boy, we all in trouble. I'm gonna sue just because it scared me. But let's take property taxes first. So the only people who pay property taxes are people who own property.
Right.
Now, that includes your automobiles.
Okay.
There's a fee
Right.
assessed. So
North
if you
Carolina
own-
got me good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you own a home, but only those people will pay the sales tax.
Okay.
I mean the property tax. I'm sorry.
Property tax.
Property tax.
So with the sales tax, everybody who makes a purchase pays sales tax.
Right. Okay.
Now, this is the interesting thing. When the quarter-cent sales tax was created, it specifically prohibited adding sales tax to certain things.
Okay.
Prescription medicines, gasoline, groceries.
Okay.
So this is what the naysayers do. Well, when I order grocery, I buy Pampers. Or when I order groceries, I buy other things.
If you have a baby, you kind of need Pampers.
Well, you may. You may. Well, you can use diapers. But anyway, we won't go there. We won't go there. Okay. So but the point being is they start lumping in all of these things that get taxed.
Okay.
And so what happens is, and let me make sure I got this right. So there is tax assessed on those things other than the things that I said were excluded.
Okay.
But this is what a quarter-cent sales tax looks like. When we say a quarter-cent sales tax, what we're really talking about is 1/4 of 1 penny
I get it.
added to the value of whatever it is you purchase. So for the person who spends $20, and it ain't gas, it's not prescription, and it's not grocery, they're going to pay 5 cents on the $20 that they spend.
Okay.
And if they spend $100, they're going to spend a quarter
Okay.
on this tax.
Okay.
Now, when you consider that, consider this. A lot of the sales tax generated in Mecklenburg County comes from people who don't live here.
Right.
yes.
And that's really was the crux of the question. This person lives in South Carolina but works in North Carolina.
If they come and buy something, they're going to help.
Okay. So it's not just us in North Carolina.
People come from Philadelphia, come through the airport,
right,
they're going to
okay.
pay too.
So everybody would have to pay this tax.
Everybody will pay
Okay.
the sales tax. But let me tell you, the naysayers, the one that don't want you to do this tax, let me tell you why they're concerned. They are more likely than I am to buy the big ticket items. When they go buy that Maybach
Right. Or that Tesla.
or that Tesla,
Right.
they're going to pay. So they don't want to pay. So they're telling you, you know what? You shouldn't do that. You're going to be taxed.
Is there a Tesla dealer here?
Yes. Well, Matthews.
Oh, nice.
Straight up.
So,
can't afford
so
to
that's,
go.
that's
Every
the
time I
message.
go to
They want to
Shangri-La.
scare you because you're going to be taxed. Now, you're the one who can least afford it. Don't you vote for that. But, okay, so I like Chick-fil-A.
I'm going to need to work
I
on
don't-
you
yes.
with that one, but
We're-
okay.
yeah.
Okay, I know why y'all got an issue with Chick-fil-A, but I'm just saying.
They
I'm just
also
admitting it.
fund Trump.
Okay, I also, okay. So I
Burger
also
King.
like,
We're not-
I
we're
like
not
chicken
gonna-
coop too.
Okay, chicken coop.
All right,
right,
so
well,
okay,
okay.
so okay.
About to have a whole other show up in
That's a whole other show. We can't go there.
No.
But the bottom line is that everybody who makes a purchase gets to participate.
Yeah.
So it's equally
Okay.
distributed.
Okay.
And
that clarification helps a lot, George, because I think that's where, like you said, there isn't one place for someone to go. Melissa, you had another question?
Yeah, well, my other question is kind of a go back to the beginning, was related to this incremental tax. So is this the last incremental tax increase we can make without approval from legislature? And you kind of addressed
He's been
that.
waiting.
Yeah, you addressed it a little bit in the beginning, but if you can talk to that a little bit more.
So you know, I hate to go there.
No, you
Because
don't.
this show ain't about religion.
right.
It ain't about religion.
It is not.
But-
This
but-
show is about
because you don't want to
whatever
have
we
that
want.
conversation tonight.
You know
either.
what? This show is
don't
about
have
whatever
that
we want it to be.
But this is what I do know. So when the legislature that was in place at the time took county dollars, and in exchange for county dollars, they took county dollars. In exchange for county dollars, said, well, what we're going to do is we're going to let you assess a 1/4% sales tax. But before you can do it, you got to get the community to approve it. So they take our tax dollars and they
Right.
say, if you want to generate them, now make the community agree that you want to generate them.
Okay.
Yeah. That's the first concern. And so we have been behind the 8 ball as it relates to our ability to assess tax. So today, on the books, it says no county can assess a higher tax rate than 1.5% in taxes. So about half of the counties in the state of North Carolina are already there.
Okay.
Others have not gotten there because they haven't approved that last 1/4% sales tax.
Okay.
Now,
Everybody's hanging on to it.
right. 'Cause
Waiting for
they
it.
keep getting these
The
carrots.
what if.
Say, well, don't spend it yet because you could do this. Don't spend that yet because you could do it. But this is what's interesting. It's the fact that just recently, and y'all Google this. Y'all smart. Y'all Google this.
Everybody be prepared to Google.
Google
Right.
this. Google this. House Bill, that's NCHB 667. House Bill 667 has just recently passed.
Okay.
It passed by a vote of 107 to 5, bipartisan support to change that law.
Okay.
All I want
Which
them to do is
means
give us our money back.
that everything that people say is final ain't final. Now,
Sure.
it's waiting to go before the state senate. But then the place that I wasn't going to go to, even if that wasn't the case. Oh, ye of little faith. Oh, help me somebody. So, why is it that when somebody tells you can't do something, that's final for you?
Right. Right.
Don't let me go there.
Okay, now we put a lot of energy and time into this arts conversation. I have a school-related question for you.
Yes.
Okay.
Are the teachers with the master degrees national board certified? Do you know?
Well, not necessarily.
Okay.
National board certification is a separate certification irrespective of what kind of degrees you have. You got to go through a program.
Okay.
Now, what people don't talk about is nationally certified teachers get paid on a higher scale.
Right, because they have more certification.
Yeah, but then the
That's the
debate,
premise of it.
the
Not saying
debate,
it's right.
the debate is with the teachers who do have the master's degree
Right.
and do have higher education, but are not certified. So we're not going to get into that
Right,
argument
right.
because we
Okay.
don't control that pay.
Right.
You had another
And
one?
no,
Melissa?
that was it. But I would just say that if you have any questions, pop them in.
You got
either-
multiple ways to
Yeah.
reach out to us, and I appreciate everyone reaching out
I'm glad
and
y'all on
sharing.
top of that stuff because I ain't working it right.
So, George, here's the other thing. People are also sharing a
Yeah,
lot for
right.
both of you because, of course, hey, Jermaine Nakia Lee shared, I am a published playwright, songwriter, composer, master teaching artist who has had residences with the Gantt Center, the Blumenthal Arts Center, Museum of the New South, Mint Museum, and I've been a successful working artist in Charlotte for the nearly 20 years. Arts and education programs funded by the county have helped frame my artistic abilities and my career in arts.
We know
Will
you're
Adams,
fabulous.
like we already
We know,
so for those who
Jermaine.
didn't know Jermaine, now they know how amazing you are.
Right.
So Will Adams, who is one of their founding members and creators of Team True Blue, and Team True Blue has been around for many years, working directly in the community. They do the annual Stop the Violence motorcycle ride and drive through. They help to coordinate the whole community unity day that was at Freedom Park earlier this year, about in the summertime. Will said he was in the marching band. Excuse me. He was in the marching band with CMS. What happened to the band's football games at halftime? He was in the marching band since the 5th grade, and still marching today. And he 47, even though he marching a different
March
way.
on, brother.
But you share, and that's it. You shared what happened. We allow the bands and orchestra and arts to be taken out of the schools, and this conversation today has a large component of putting that back into schools.
Yeah, and you know, and when you said that, you made me think about some other people that I met before we decided to put this thing forth. And I know she's gonna get on my case, Miss Davis, that has the jazz room.
Ooh.
See, people don't even know about this little place that happens once a month. And I don't have to apologize on the air that I hadn't been there yet either. But at least I know about it and that it exists, and they're doing well with having people come in to this jazz session that takes place downtown. And I met this brother. You remember the brother we sit beside at the meeting the other day?
Yeah.
Has a black
amazing.
theatrical theater, whatever. I mean, he produces plays and theater productions. And in fact, I went to the MTA Awards, whatever that is. But it's akin to the Tony Awards.
Okay.
Okay, so my invitation must have been lost in the mail for the MTA.
Yeah, I went there, and
I was out of town.
I heard a song from Be a Lion, and that's getting ready to come back.
Okay.
As a part of the production that they're getting ready to do. And so what I learned from my tour was that there is so much art in this community that we just don't have a clue. And we've got to figure out a way to let our community know what's going on. Oftentimes people sit at home on the weekend with absolutely nothing to do when you should be one of them.
Right. I'm like, when I have a day off, I think it's gotten to the point where now Charlotte has grown to where we have so many things to do that you end up doing nothing. And then you see about it, FOMO, fear of missing out. You see it on Facebook where people went out and had this amazing time. You're like, what?
LaWana
That happened? Oh, I totally do. So
what embarrasses me?
how do we create a space to let people know?
Yeah, but let me tell you what's embarrassing. When I have guests who come from out of town with a list of all the things that they're going to do
Right, yeah.
that I don't even know exist in Charlotte.
Right.
Now, that's what's embarrassing.
Yeah.
But they take the time to do the research when people here won't do it.
Staycation.
So okay,
Well,
so I'm gonna bring this back. I'm gonna
Bring it back to what?
Just to the very specifics of this money and what it's going to. Because you mentioned a while ago, I mean, part of it is a lot of this conversation is absolutely correct. I mean, we need to spend more time looking for things to do, participating in things happening in the community. But I mean, the part of me who's thinking, okay, when I was a young mom and didn't have money, and maybe in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I'm working, I'm going to school, my kids, I don't even have time to go to the theater, so why am I giving you this extra money? If I put that hat on, right? What I hear you saying is there's a lot going on in Charlotte. There's a lot around the arts that is happening in Charlotte. So again, why am I giving you more money when things are happening. And I heard you, I understand that things are dwindling. You don't want to wait until everything is gone to try to fix it. I certainly get that. So maybe if we can talk a little bit more about the last question you had regarding the structure of this money. And, you mentioned that it's going to be, community involved, artists involved, and where this money goes. Maybe if you can talk a little bit more about, let's say that this goes through, it's approved, you get money.
governance model.
Right. So then how, what's then the process, right? How do I know that my quarter of a penny is being used for the things that we're discussing here today?
And that's a perfect segue because that was pretty much the next slide.
Okay.
Please vote against it. Now, for this person, please vote against the sales tax referendum. This sales tax was put forth because Arts and Science Council had a fundraising shortfall. It is not right and simply unfair to ask taxpayers to stabilize their funding when so many citizens are struggling to stabilize their own.
This is a Pat Cotham question.
It is not a Pat
It's a
Cotham
Pat
question.
Cotham question.
I
She might
got
not be
everybody.
the one that asked it.
She
but-
wasn't even the one. That's not that. I'll tell you who it
Listen,
was.
that- listen,
but that wasn't
that-
it. But
that's
you
a
gonna
legit
leave my
question.
friend alone.
That's a
in
legit-
20
yes.
in
Pat's
24.
also my friend,
but
but
we
this is a
also
fair
are gonna
question.
address
I'm gonna
the
educate y'all
numbers.
about her, too.
In 2014, we're gonna talk about her, Vi, and Dimple. In 2014, voters rejected a tax increase by 61% to 39%. Let's do it again. Hashtag one more time. There is too much ambiguity and unanswered questions. Where specifically will the money go? How will we, the people, hold ASC accountable? We need details. It's a valid question regarding details, and you've shared a lot tonight, but it ties in for
Right.
that person who's hearing tonight all of these programs that are going on, and this beauty. One, for me, I would say we lose all that beauty because the funding is running out. These are grants that were approved a while ago where they're
right.
just completing out the programs, and if there's not continued money, the program doesn't go anywhere. But what would be your response?
Yeah, and so it is unfortunate that people have not taken the time to listen to the debate. And then maybe there are some things that we could have done differently to foster more discussion about all of this. Because people oftentimes react because of a lack of knowledge.
Right.
True.
It's not that these things haven't been discussed. It's not that they're not answers to the question.
Okay.
I'm willing to bet you that many of these people have not even taken the time to go to the website that says questions, because they've heard these questions before, response.
Okay, so let's pretend
I'm not the computer.
that-
I don't have
no,
all of
no,
it.
no. All I want you to give me is, I mean, obviously you are fully supportive of this, and
absolutely.
And again, I'm not, I support arts, teachers, green space, all of it. Tell me a little bit about the accountability for if there's not, if there isn't already a plan in place that's, kind of mapped out, what is then going to happen if this money is approved? How does that money move forward? How
To
does that
ensure
planning move
allocation.
And
forward?
that's a fair question, and that is what we deem to be our governance structure. So what you're really asking is, okay, who's going to control the money?
Right.
Who's going to decide where it goes and who gets it?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And so as a part of our resolution for this tax, there is a governance structure.
Okay.
And so we heard people on one side that say, well, that's taxpayer money, and we didn't elect them arts people to decide where our money goes. And when we heard that, we said, okay, well, we need more elected officials who are accountable to the public to be a part of the Arts and Science Council.
Right. Okay.
And so now we're going to have a structure that will allow up to 4 county commissioners to serve on the Arts and Science Council Board of Directors.
Okay.
We're going to also allow for up to 4 city council members to be on the board of directors.
Okay.
Not going to be me.
We're going to allow for 1 elected official from the north, 1 elected official from the south,
Okay.
these in the townships
Okay.
outside of the city of Charlotte, to be on the board of directors. The city council will then get to appoint 4 people from anywhere in Charlotte
Okay.
to be on the board of directors.
Okay.
The county commission will also be able to appoint up to 4 members on the board of directors. And then, once we've done that, then we got all these slots at large because we want to allow for the artists to have a representative. We want to allow for the theater companies to have a representative. We want to have a seat for those people who represent the arts organizations. We want to have a seat for those people who are just artistic by nature. People in the community who have an interest.
Okay.
And so once that takes place, once this is passed, then we'll set up a process where people can apply.
Okay.
And they'll make their case as to why they ought to serve on the board of directors.
Okay.
You don't have to have a title. You don't have to have a name. You don't have to be Mr. Big Somebody to apply.
Okay.
And then, based on the principles that we're governed by,
Okay.
accountability, diversity, all of those things, we will look at all of those names and we will create a new board of directors
Okay.
who will have the responsibility of, number one, determining which things get funded,
Okay.
that they're geographically funded,
Okay.
how much each request will allocate, and the Arts and Science Council new board of directors will be under contract to the county commission, who will set parameters as to the things that they must do.
Okay.
They must demonstrate diversity.
Okay.
They must demonstrate accountability.
Right.
The books are going to be open. Anybody who wants to see can see.
Okay.
No secrets.
Okay.
It'll be totally transparent. Now, just so that people understand how serious we are, we learned that the Arts and Science Council has an endowment.
Right.
Okay.
That endowment generates money because part of this structure means that the Arts and Science Council will no longer be able to solicit donations.
Okay.
That means those people who are currently the folk who raise money,
Right.
they will be transitioned either to new opportunities or be rift or something like that.
We just
I
gonna
just
say
do-
new opportunities.
New opportunities.
They gotta go.
There wasn't a good way to say it because I don't know that all
New
of them
opportunities.
could do that.
Yeah.
But the fact is, they will slim down their organization such that the monies generated from the endowment will pay the operating expense.
Okay.
So we can expect at least 95% of the money generated for the arts to go specifically to the arts. It's not like they're going to hire a whole bunch of staff people out of the money,
Okay.
and then what's left will then go for arts and arts education. But
Okay. So that's a good point. So is that the number specifically of the money that comes in? Is it only about 5% that's going to go for operating
well,
costs?
we don't know.
Oh, you don't?
It
Okay.
could be less.
Because
than
you
that.
also got to think about the realities of that. You do not want to sacrifice in the operating because that is one of the biggest challenges with grants, period. A grant will come in to pay for the work, but not the operating costs and the administrative costs that actually go along with doing that work because the number of applications are going to increase and
Oh,
you want to make sure
absolutely.
you have enough staff to do that. But I want to stay right here for a minute, George. Joseph, I think George may have answered part of your question, but I'm going to read him the whole question. Thank you for sending this in. One final question,
Ain't nobody sending me no question. What's up with that?
because you
You
answering
ain't
them
paying
for
it
all
no
of your
mind
people.
anyways.
Okay.
What are the safeguards to ensure that the longtime black families who've been getting harmed by the city and county for generations, either through displacement, gentrification, development, will get enough power through board assignments and structuring of the bylaws, etc., have the political power, the board that you mentioned, they need to have the much needed and deserved arts and science resources get into their communities. Because you mentioned 4 appointments from city, up to 4 from the city, from the county, community appointments, plus the township appointments, plus making sure we have space for the arts. maybe one seat. That's a very valid question when a lot of this is really being targeted to working class, working poor communities of why this will be beneficial to finally get arts accessible to all.
And you know what? That is a good question, and I'm happy that he asked the question, because that's another thing we've thought about. Trust me, there have been people say, don't say trust me, just say what you got to say. Okay, all right. So what I want to say is that there has been lots of discussion around who's controlling what and who has say. LaWana, you and I were in a meeting the other day when this brother had comments to make about
That were very valid.
about what has been happening historically, such as, well, yeah, black people get money to participate in the arts, but we don't get as much as other folk. Or we don't get the largest amount.
Right.
And so one of the things that we're doing to ensure that people look at that across the board is by giving people across the board the opportunity to participate on the board of directors and have some say. So hopefully, no matter what sphere you come from, you will have an advocate for whatever your issue or whatever your concern is. If you're that person who lives in a community that's not desirable and it could be enhanced or infused by the arts, hopefully you're going to have somebody from your community who's on that board of directors who's going to say, hey, wait a minute, look, we haven't been doing this over there, but let's do it. Let me tell you one of the biggest concerns that I learned throughout this process. I met with some African-American ministers, and let me tell you, if somebody's going to ask you a tough question, the preacher's going to ask the question. But as I began to answer these questions, something became abundantly clear to me. And what it was is there are some African-American churches right now who have the orchestra at their church, and it's paid for through the Arts and Science Council.
Okay.
They have plays and performances at their church, and it's paid for through the Arts and Science Council.
Okay.
What bothered those other preachers is we didn't know that happened.
Okay.
We didn't know you could do that. We've been left out.
Okay.
And so we have to do a better job of letting people know that, hey, these grants are available.
Right.
Competitive process.
Yeah.
But if you go through the process, there's a possibility that you could have that same experience at your church within your congregation.
Right.
Now, this is something that came up that I hadn't thought about. I thought about a lot. Trust me, I've been in a lot of meetings. But the one thing that came, that meeting we were at the other day, was say, but there are people who can't write a grant.
Right.
Sure.
And even if they wrote a grant, would somebody
Fund
it because it's not written well, or because I don't have the ability to express what I really want to do.
Right.
But what I'm going to do is going to be valuable and beneficial to so many people.
Right.
And so one of the things we begin to have conversations around is how do we educate people on what to do when submitting a grant? Do we offer in-person interviews so that the person who can't write well can come and sit with us and talk to us about their vision?
Right.
So now I will be the first to admit that's one of the things we hadn't thought about.
I mean, that's a
Right.
that's a bigger question that I don't think. Myself, I wouldn't hold this council accountable for ensuring that, grant
A lot of
writing is
people in the
accountable. No,
community would.
and I understand that, and I think in general, for governmental issues in general, there should be processes in place that folks can get help with that community groups and organizations who are just starting up or nonprofits can get some help in doing grant writing and things of that nature.
You're making my throat get dry.
It's because you won't stop talking. That's the problem.
You got so much
I know.
information to share.
Okay, so I'm glad to know that you're saying that all of these folks from the community, all these positions are essentially going to be, this whole new council is going to be created to oversee this money once this initiative is approved. So I guess it threw me off a little bit when you said that the current, the existing structure of the Arts and Science Council will disband.
No longer be. Yep.
So I guess my question then would be, does that mean if there are no longer going to be folks who are doing fundraising and seeking out funds, is now the Arts and Science Council just going to rely on this tax money?
Yes.
Okay, so does that mean that they're no longer eligible to apply for outside dollars?
So I'm glad you asked that, because that is important.
Okay.
So what people don't understand is that a lot of the arts organizations have endowments. Miss Susie died.
Right.
She bequeathed, is that the right word?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
TH.
To this particular arts organization, her endowment.
Right.
So this particular arts organization has an endowment of $50 million. Those things will continue.
Sure. Well, you can't stop those things from
Right.
happening.
I have a friend and supporter who told me, yeah, I support the arts. He said, I support them so much to the tune that I gave them $25,000. I'm like, you contribute to my campaign?
You're losing me. You're losing me.
But the fact is, there will be people, for no other reason other than the fact that they get a tax break,
Yeah.
will still contribute to a nonprofit organization.
Right.
Well, so maybe I should ask the question this way. Currently, how is the Arts and Science Council funded? Currently, or if this doesn't go through, how will it continue to be funded? What dollars are covering
What
that right
happens
now?
if this initiative does not pass?
Well, what will happen is that the organizations that continue to exist will exist primarily based on fee for service.
Okay.
In other words, if you can afford to pay for it, you can afford to participate.
Okay.
So as we are getting ready to wind down, and George and Melissa, thank you both so much, because I think we answered a lot of the questions. I am going to read through them, because those that have been tuning in with us, you have seen some of these same posts online. And as I read them out, I'm hoping that you have heard the answer to it, because we went into a lot of detail, but I still need to have a couple of minutes for us to specifically talk about parks, which we haven't yet.
Yeah.
I'm struggling with the sales tax because I'm not comfortable with the governance. We had talked about that. However, I wish they would have never called it the arts tax, just like they should have never called the ACA Obamacare. The name alone will lose people.
Right.
That's not what it's called.
No, it's not. It's not.
It
called
is
that.
called.
But you know what though? I understand that person's concern.
Right, but what is the
Because-
actual title?
One quarter
A
of-
better. It's a better Mecklenburg.
It's
A better Mecklenburg.
Right.
And so what happens is, now, I've been around a long time. Sometimes I'm guilty myself. We call it what we feel comfortable calling it,
sure.
and sometimes that hurts,
Right.
but that's what we feel comfortable calling it.
Right.
Other people will call it that because they know it's a stinger
Yes.
and people won't want to do it.
Right.
That's what they did to Obamacare.
Right.
They call it Obamacare,
Instead
so
of the
people wouldn't
afford-
like.
and then they
as
said,
opposed to Affordable Care.
I don't want no doggone Obamacare. I got the Affordable Care Act. Okay.
See, so part of this educational process
Right.
Right.
is to make sure that people understand the connection between the two. I think that's a valid concern.
I do.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted to read it. Now, here's a good one. We try not to get too political, but this vote will directly impact our arts community as well as education and our parks. Mark your calendars to vote on November 5th. Please share, share, share. There is an extremely important referendum that we should all vote for that will help with our parks, the arts, and education. It will be on the ballot as the quarter-cent sales tax, but there will be no explanation as to what this is for, so it is up to us to spread the word about the positive impact it will have on our community. To get more info, go to bettermecklenburg.com. So this is
Amen.
someone where, as a family, they historically do not get into the conversation of politics. So they never really share anything political on their social media page, that felt a need to say, Go do your own research.
Right.
And by you saying what the actual title is, it helps the people to understand that it is not the arts tax.
Right.
So let me, you made me think about something else, because we didn't really talk about other opportunities for people to get involved.
Yes.
So we didn't talk a lot about how it's going to impact the parks. This money will totally transform our park and recreation system,
How?
in that where we're at the very bottom right now, 17 million a year over the lifespan will catch us up. Now, when I talk about involvement, this is the reason I bring it up. Mecklenburg County is getting ready to develop its new capital park and recreation plan,
Okay.
which is a 10-year plan that says how many park and recreation centers we're going to have, how many greenways we're going to have, all these other things. Now, people in my district were fortunate. I had to clap myself on the back for that, because
I used
when
to
I
be
got
in
on the
your
board,
district.
they're going to build 4 regional recreation centers, and District 3 is going
District 3 County Commission is different than
is going to
District
get
3
a
Council.
$43 million recreation center built off Eastway Drive. It's up. People can drive by and see it.
Okay.
It's going to be a while before it opens. But it takes that kind of advocacy, because now they're building one in the north part of Mecklenburg,
Okay.
and there are 2 more to be built. So it's going to take that kind of advocacy to determine where those centers will be built.
Now, George, we got to go back and think back to many years ago where there was a bond package regarding parks that did not materialize in communities which were predominantly minority, black, and Latino, because we saw the diversity we see today. Charlotte was very black and white, and then we started seeing our Latino population growing. But we were promised and voted for some parks that never materialized. So people still have concern about that.
So let me tell you that under the current county commission,
Thank you.
every project that was promised to this community has been funded.
Okay.
So we can't use that one anymore. Now,
Well, we
the-
got to at least address it because
well,
a lot of people
that-
didn't know that. So
that's
thank you
true.
for sharing that.
But this is what I did want to say. So y'all made me remember what I wanted to say in the first place.
We got you.
So there will be all these opportunities for people to weigh in and get involved, or either participate in the development of the 10-year master plan.
Okay.
So for all these park enthusiasts, and I can think of some, and you need to talk to your county commissioners to see if you can get on this committee that's going to be making this decision. Because one of the things I hear is I can go to South Charlotte to Tyvola Road
Yes.
and have the best tennis courts in the country.
I do have some really great ones.
But I don't have that on my side of town.
Oh, Parkwood and
So if you want to see something like that happen,
Yeah.
those people who participate on those committees are the ones who decide.
where it's going.
So when you hear people say there's an opportunity to participate in the park and recreation master plan, they need to apply. They need to let somebody know that they're interested, because too many times people sit and wait and expect things are just going to happen and somebody's going to do the right thing, and it doesn't happen. Then they're upset and then they're mad when there's an opportunity in advance to participate.
So where would so if this money comes through, where would this new council, Arts and Science Council, where would that fit into the planning for the overall 10-year parks plan?
I'm glad you asked that question. See, I got answers for everything. So, see?
People are going to think I'm here as a plant for you. pretty
Right,
soon.
and she was supposed to be partially
met this lady.
resident,
No,
new
I
year,
am. These are legit
little bit of
questions I
antagonist.
have. Oh, these are legit questions.
Yeah, and that is really a good question, because the money will be segregated.
Okay.
The arts money will go into a special fund,
Okay.
separate and apart from the county budgeted dollars to ensure that they go for the development of this master plan.
So that answers a question that I received online regarding how do we ensure that the county can't later change its mind the way the state has done with the lottery.
Right.
How the lottery was promised to be one thing, they reallocated that. Well, we actually had funding for schools. That funding was reallocated to another budget line item, and then we created the education lottery, and that was supposed to cover it. But we see how that's working out.
Right.
So that's what happened with the parks money.
Okay.
The school system money, the money for teachers' education dollars, the county commission has a number of ways to address that. What we can do is what we call put it in contingency, which means that we restrict the use of those funding until the superintendent gives us a plan that we approved for the allocation. So the superintendent can send us a plan and say, look, I want to give all my staff a 0.5% that ought to be spent.
You have to approve that based on the
Well,
superintendent's
we actually
ask.
approve every dollar,
Every dollar.
every county dollar that goes to the school system.
Right. The
I
current
see.
county
I got you.
commission. So
Yeah.
that's
Just the
why the county
commission, that's all.
commission.
That's just one issue that people will try to make a big deal about it. They'll say, well, you know what? You can't hold a new county commission accountable and responsible for what an old county commission said they were going to do.
So
And
by
I-
this current county commission making this decision and this commitment on the bond, when we have next year's elections, they're
It
saying new county
could change
commission.
that.
Right.
So we've thought seriously about that. Number one, voters are to hold elected officials accountable. And when they say they're going to do something, hold them accountable. So if you get a new commission, one of the questions you ought to be asking them
On the campaign trail.
on the campaign trail, what are you going to do with this money?
Right.
And are you going to spend it in accordance with the way it was approved?
Right.
That's one thing. But the other thing is on tomorrow, we will be meeting with our Mecklenburg County delegation, both from the Senate and the legislature,
North Carolina General Assembly.
General Assembly. And one of the things we're going to be asking of them is that they will put forth legislation, not just for Mecklenburg County, but for the entire state that says, if you have an elected body that goes out and tells the people, we're going to raise this amount of money and we're going to use it for this purpose, that they are obligated to use it for that purpose and that purpose only.
So it cannot be changed.
So it
at a
cannot
later
be
date.
changed.
They don't adhere to that in the state.
Wow.
But, they might support some
That's
language
also
for the
another
rest of
show.
us. That's, you know.
Well, but and the point being is to let people know that with the many hours that we've been discussing this, I can't think of a whole lot of things we hadn't discussed
Yeah.
because
Right.
it hadn't just been a few of us.
Sure.
There are lots of different people in lots of different places having these same discussions, and every time a question comes up, we try to address it. Now, does that mean that we've addressed everything? Probably not.
Right.
But the fact is, when it's brought to our attention, we're not going to shy away from it. We're going to deal with it so that people feel comfortable and have some assurances that the money that is generated from this tax is spent in accordance with the way that they desire.
So, Mr. Dunlap, if you had a chance to do your final plug to all of those who have tuned in and those who will be watching this
I
at a
get to
later
do that.
date,
Yeah.
what would you like for them to know?
Well, dog.
What's
I
your
said-
elevator speech?
I said so much.
You shared a lot, and you've honestly answered a lot of the questions that have come through for both of us, as well as the questions that have been lingering out there on Facebook. I believe you've given a lot of clarity for a lot of people, but hopefully you all to go out before you vote, do some research. But what would you like
Absolutely.
for us to know?
Well, I think people need to understand, there's an organization in our community called So Much Good. For so little, 20 cents,
25.
25 cents for $100.
Right. Yeah.
For so little,
Quarter of a penny.
we can do so much. Not just for one segment of our community, but for the broader community. And I think given that opportunity, for as little as it costs, we ought to take advantage of that. Because this opportunity may never come this way again.
That's true. Ms. Morris, as you've listened and been a part of this, have you learned anything that you didn't know?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the conversation about who's going to be overseeing this money is really important, so that there isn't this ambiguity about, oh, is it going to be people who already aren't doing what I want them to do with dollars? I think it's really important for folks to realize that there are going to be people in the community, if you really are concerned about this, that you have the opportunity to try to apply to be on one of these committees and be really engaged. And I'd ask, what's the website again? So folks have
Better
it.
Mecklenburg.
So, yeah, that's it. We kept it simple. They
Okay.
kept it real simple.
So a Better Mecklenburg.
Mecklenburg. Better, Better, for those that may be driving and listening. Mecklenburg, Mecklenburg, as in George.com
Is
or
it .com
.org.
or .org?
Okay, you gave me that look, George.
Once you start
That
typing
is
in all
a
the better,
bettermecklenburg.com. A bettermecklenburg.com.
I'll also, sort of unrelated to this, and before you go through the whole spiel, I also will give myself a little plug that I'm going to be back on the show with LaWana in a couple of episodes. You'll see a lot more about that. And I won't be having a show here, but I will be doing some podcasting in this space because it's so important that we are supporting our Black networks, our Black communities. If you don't know about Square, you really need to do some research because it's really amazing what Steve has going on here. The level of commitment that folks have with all of these shows, and they're growing. It's really important that you check it out, that you support, that you can give funding dollars that you're not going to be giving to the arts. Make sure you do that in Black communities.
Especially since we're outside of Charlotte, we're in
extra money.
Gastonia.
Yeah.
And she takes all my thunder
And
over here.
so yeah, keep an eye out for that as well. And certainly, I'm very thankful. Thank you for having me here, and it's been really great having these conversations.
And welcome to Mecklenburg County.
Right. 4.5 years later.
Almost 5
so
years later.
this
right.
has been an honor and a pleasure for me. Thank you all for tuning in to Unapologetically Black with LaWana Mayfield. Make sure you go to our YouTube page, go to our Facebook page, Square Media Network. Again, for those that are listening and may not be watching, that is Square, SQAIR. Media Network, and also tune in throughout the week because we have the project with Steve Rutherford, Deuce Lux, the conversation with Yolanda Trapman, the slant, the situation with Joel Ford, Crafted, Channel 13, Frankly Speaking, The Reader. We are growing, we are expanding. All we need is you. Thank you for tuning in, everyone.